There is a situation that goes on that's called homeostasis. Homeostasis means it balances out in our body what we have. We take food in not as cattle, grazing all day long and putting a little of digestible material in from the time they get up until the time they sleep, but in spurts and socially, and from a work point of view, we can't spend all of our time grazing and eating. We do our eating in particular spurts, and usually in a 3 times a day schedule that we have developed in our normal social living of people, that we save food around and eat it all at one time. The way we keep doing this at the present is not a very efficient way. Most of us will be having our big meal later in the day, and after the big meal, when you should be working hard to use up that food supply that you've just put in, you'll be doing nothing but resting, so that the intake and the outgo of food and energy are not at optimal times with our present social structure. Back years ago, when I was a boy, the large meal was oftentimes at noon, and so then the afternoon was spent in heavy work, and the evening meal was spent just relatively short time before going to bed, and usually was a very light meal just to sustain you through the night. Working as we do, of putting food in only periodically, in order for the body to work constantly, and we do need energy right along. Even though we're not working, we're breathing, we're thinking, our blood, all of our cells in our body are working, our heart is beating, our lungs are pumping, our muscles are working, and so there needs to be a constant source of energy that's available. And how do we get that? If you see on the television people that are starving, they've had a famine over months. They're marching around in a dusty desert with nothing coming in, and they're all skin and bones. How do they still remain alive without any intake of food? It all comes down to storage. When we eat, and we do eat more than we need, we put on weight, and we put it on as fat, and it is stored. A lot of it is stored in sugar content, and that would be in the liver. The others are stored in the lung, in the omentum, and other places in the body as fat, which is stored in a concentrated fashion and can later be broken down into carbohydrate by our body if needed at a later time. Glycogen would be the how we store the sugar in the body, and that would be stored in the liver. It can be called on as needed by another hormone we have not talked about yet, and that is also made in the pancreas and also made in the islets of Langerhans, and it's called glucagon. And what does glucagon do? Glucagon is a similar thing. It's an anti-insulin type of substance that goes when we have the sugar in the blood getting too low. The triggering mechanism in our brains, we have sensors that tell us all of these things that we are unaware of. It sends a message to the pancreas that the sugar is too low, and the pancreas turns on the glucagon. The glucagon goes to the liver and encourages it to release that sugar that it's stored, so that your sugar can be low and you don't eat anything, but stimulated by glucagon, your sugar can come up. This quite often comes on during the early morning hours when you're sleeping, to get your sugar up to normal, and you haven't eaten since supper time, and so during the night and up until just before breakfast time, your sugar has gradually subsided in amount, and needs to be replenished. So it is, and the liver dumps more sugar back into it, and keeps you going high enough so that you can continue to function. So this is what carries us through in times of stress and in times of need, when input is gone. If we're for any reason, famine or non-famine, or incarceration, or whatever reason that we are deprived of food, our sugar should start going down. It will be replenished from our own liver, as long as there's something there to replenish. Now, that doesn't last forever, and pretty soon your liver will be exhausted from what it has stored, and you'll have to start getting it from other places. And so this is how being on a diet and fasting at times will be able to bring down your weight, because you start using up the fat that you've stored, turning it into sugar, using the sugar that you've now converted from fat in as energy, and continue to go in that manner. It can really restore if you should break down too much from your fat and have some higher than you need. If it's working properly, some of it could be restored in the liver as an immediate source. It's more immediately available out of the liver as glycogen than it is out of fat. So that these keep our blood sugar level running pretty well level all the time, without us having to worry anything about it. This is all done in an unconscious or subconscious manner of keeping the body going in a nice balance. In order to do the testing, well, the doctor will look at these items. The other things that can be tested, of course, are the cholesterol and the triglycerides and the other lipid levels, which are necessary in measured amounts for the perfect function. And there is something. All of these are not bad. All of these are useful items. Many of our hormones are made out of cholesterol, and cholesterol in itself is not a bad substance that we should get rid of altogether. As a matter of fact, if you do, you get trouble, because you start getting into deficiencies in certain of the hormones that we need to keep our body functioning properly.